Hi everybody, good morning and welcome to the corrections video for the paper 2. I hope that you guys have tried the paper 2 on your own and that you are here to do your corrections. So in this video, we are going to go through it together and I'll try to explain how we answer the questions and including some of the theories that are related to that question. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you so much for doing your best every single day and that I am always proud of you guys. Okay. Alright, so question 3A, and this is a paper that came from June 2017, question 1. And in this question, they asked you, in this figure, it shows the front view. So let me just get my highlighter. So the front view of a person's chest and their abdomen. And so you're going to study this picture and what you're supposed to do. So you're supposed to draw the diaphragm as it would appear immediately after breathing in. Okay, so the diaphragm, we know that the diaphragm kind of looks like we usually draw it like this. Either like this or it would have like a more domed shape. So this is when the diaphragm is relaxing. And over here it is when it's contracting. So here we say breathing in, so that means that we want the volume of the thorax to be much more bigger. Therefore, we want it to be contracting. And so when we're drawing it, it should be right around like below the rib cage. So we're going to draw it a bit like flatter, just like that. Okay, this one is a little bit difficult for you guys to kind of imagine right now, but because of the fact that we haven't covered the future topic, which is about the transport system in humans, so I haven't shown you a proper kind of like diagram of where the heart would be, but we do know the liver should be somewhere. So I'm gonna show you guys Google images of this. So I think this one is what I was looking at. So the heart is actually in between the lung, but you can see that it is more towards like the left side of the lung, and the liver is right below the lung. So what we're going to do is that, so it says here to follow the instructions. By the way, it's very, very important to follow instructions in the exam. So it says here to draw a circle or an O to show the position of the heart. So from that diagram that we saw, the heart should be around here. So you can draw an O over there and an X to show the position of the liver. So the liver is right below the lung, which should be around here. So we can draw an X over there. And that would give you your 3 marks. Okay, so next question. Figure 1.2 shows a person about to lift the handle of a bucket from position A to B. So we can see that when they lift the handle, the bucket handle moved up. And it says here the movement of the bucket handle illustrates. So illustration is a word that people use usually for drawing. So when you illustrate something, it's something that you can find in real life and then you kind of like make an image of it as a drawing. So it means that illustrating just shows you kind of like what something should be. So it is showing you here so in a drawing way, it's the features of the movement of a person's chest while breathing in. So the chest here, we are usually referring to the chest as in the area of the thorax, thoracic cavity, which is controlled by your ribs. And also, I guess, yeah, mainly, I think chest, right? Chest is the ribs and also the intercostal muscles. I realized in our exercises, some of you guys got a lot of mistakes with the spelling of intercostal, like you spell it as coast, but it is cost, like as in this cost like $2, $3, like that. Okay, state two similarities between. So here we have similarities between the movement of a person's chest, so movement of the chest while breathing in, and the movement of the handle. So just now the movement of the handle was like going upwards, right? And that is pretty much similar to the movement of the chest. So there are a few answers you can go through here. I'm going to show you guys 4 different answers that can give you 4 different marks, but at the same time, what we want here is basically you're going to be awarded just 2 marks, but I'm just going to give you 4 different types of answers. So the first one is the handle is raised upwards. That is similar to your rib cage moving upwards. And then the second one is that outward movement of the handle as well when you kind of like raise it up. So it's upwards and going out as well, because you can see that the handle here is touching the bucket, which I think is supposed to represent your cavity, so your thorax. And this is actually representing, I have a feeling this is your rib cage. So you can see that it's moving outwards and going away from the thorax or the bucket, and it is moving upwards as in naik ke atas as well. So your third point that you can state here is the fact that, so if you can see what caused the movement of that bucket handle to move upwards is actually the hand itself. So that's actually representing as well the fact that muscle movement is helping the moving upwards. So you can say that muscle in the hand contracts, and you have also muscles, your intercostal muscles, that would contract. The external one to contract to move the rib cage upwards and outwards during breathing in. And number 4, the fact that any type of movement and muscle contraction would require energy. So movement, so any of these 4, you can choose 2 out of these 4 to get your 2 marks. Okay, part 2. Explain the differences between the movement of the person's chest and the movement of the handle. And this time it's the differences, not the similarity. Okay, so the first part is obviously the fact that, so this person is moving that handle as many times as they want, and they can even stop. But for you guys, even though you can control kind of like the rate of breathing sometimes, so you can definitely tell yourself to breathe in, breathe out, and control that. But the moving in, breathing in and breathing out, inhalation, exhalation, is actually involuntary. It happens all the time without you being able to stop yourself most of the time, unlike moving the handle. So the first thing is going to talk about how it is involuntary. So how do we express that? We say movement. Okay, number 2 is the fact that instead of having the finger muscles, we actually have muscles called intercostal muscles. So with questions in biology, they really want you to be very specific. So try to think about specific names of muscles, specific structure that are very different. Sometimes it can be obvious and you're like, are you sure that's the answer? Just try to put it in. It could actually be the answer. Okay, so the second one is we're going to name the muscle this time. Okay, third point is the fact that so the muscles are found in between rib, and this time if you have a look over here, the muscle that's acting onto the so over here that's acting on this handle, it's actually touching the handle itself to move it up. It's not that it's in between like how our intercostal muscles are. So we're going to mention that in our third point. And number 4 is the fact that the movement of this upward and outward would actually make the volume of the thoracic cavity bigger, and hence pressure would be reduced. But moving this handle didn't change the volume of this bucket at all. So we're going to mention that in our fourth point. I'm just going to give you full spelling here. And lastly, because this point, you can see that there is 5 marks given. That means you should mention about 5 points that are together. So the 5th point that I'm going to mention here is the fact that there's only one handle here, and if this is representing the rib, there you got more than one rib, so we can just mention that as our last point. Maybe instead of saying ribs, maybe rib cage should be better. So let me just, I hope it can fit rib cage. Yeah, Spelling doesn't look so good. Nerve gauge has. Okay, so that is the end for that question. Now let's move on to question number 5, which is describe and explain the features of a gas exchange surface. Okay, so this is actually one of our learning objectives that we did in our previous lesson videos. And you have to pretty much mention everything, including the fact that, so when we talk about the gas exchange surface, we are honestly mainly referring to the capillary here. And also the alveoli, because this is where gas, which is your oxygen and carbon dioxide, is actually exchanged. And so we're just going to mention the fact about how they are adapted to do their job. So this is about increasing surface area and all that. So the first one is the fact that capillaries and alveoli are 1 cell thick, and they are thin as well to reduce diffusion distance. Second point we're going to talk about is how you have thousands, or is it even millions of alveoli? Let me just have a look. Millions, actually. You have millions of alveoli. So we're going to write that down. And this helps to increase the surface area. Third point here is the fact that you have a layer of moisture. We also have a good supply of blood from capillaries. and both of those walls are semi-permeable. So that is your 4 main points. And this part, we haven't really talked much about this. I wanted to cover this point in this question, actually. So when this question is asking about effective exercise on breathing rate of a person, so we've actually seen this type of question in the MCQ, and this is kind of like a very not really self-explanatory, but it is something that you definitely have experienced on your own before. And the fact that when after exercising or even walking up the stairs, anything that requires like so much muscle movement, the fact is that your breathing would actually increase. And yes, so what we need to mention here, so what we're doing now is practicing how to express those experiences that we have in an exam question setting. So firstly, let's talk about how after exercise you would have faster and deeper breathing, and why this is because you want more oxygen to be transported into your muscles so that you can continue the exercise, right? So firstly, let me say faster and deeper. Okay, so this part is about exercising and how exercising is actually related to respiration. We're going to talk about respiration in the future topics, so I'm just going to introduce this idea to you guys right now. Point 3 is the fact that oxygen will be transported to the muscles so that the muscles can carry out this thing called aerobic respiration, which means respiration, the releasing of energy in the presence of oxygen. And your main 4th point is the fact about exercising, because when you exercise, you really need more energy for the muscles to contract. So we need to mention about having an increase in rate of aerobic respiration as well. Aerobic, so I'm sure you've heard of this word aerobic before. We use them to describe exercises like aerobics. Let's do aerobic exercises. So it really does relate to the part about aerobic respiration, which uses up a lot of oxygen to make more energy. Release more energy. Okay, part C. This is also related to a future topic, which is transport in humans, and we are going to look into how red blood cells are structured and what can be found in red blood cells. You have learned about this before in the first topic, whereby we talk about red blood cells are made up of a lot of tiny red pigments called hemoglobin. It's gonna give it a different pen here, I think would be better. And those red pigments, the hemoglobin, is the one that would combine with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. So these dots, the red pigments, they combine with the hemoglobin to form this thing called oxyhemoglobin. And this oxyhemoglobin is the one that is being transported to your cells that actually need the oxygen. Okay, so the question itself here, living in high altitude. Altitude refers to height. So if you are up a mountain, that means altitude is higher. And the fact that if you are at the sea, compared to when you are at the sea, that is a lower altitude. And the higher you get, if you learn geography, the air actually gets thinner, and that means that there is less oxygen as you go higher and higher up the ground, from the ground, sorry. Living in high altitudes increases number of red blood cells in a person's blood. It's just why athletes sometimes train in high altitude. So the reason why they want to train in high altitude is because as there's less oxygen up there, that means that their body needs to make more of this red blood cell and also make more hemoglobin, so that they are pretty much adapted to increase the uptake of oxygen. So how do we answer that question? So I'm just going to write this down for you. I'm just going to give you a full spelling of and so that we can practice together. Alright, so less oxygen is found in the atmosphere at high altitudes. The body of the athlete will adapt by making more hemoglobin and red blood cells to carry more oxygen. Okay, next up, the last question. Question 8. The diagram shows the human breathing system, and you have X and you have Y. So X refers to the trachea, and Y refers to the lungs. Okay, over here, so if we're looking at the breathing system, this one is called the larynx. And if you guys remember that when we learned about the cilia and the mucus of the goblet cells, we learned about how the air in the lungs is cleaned, and the mucus is actually moved to your pharynx. Moved up to your pharynx. So the pharynx and the larynx are two different parts, and I just need to pretty much show you guys here. So if you guys can see here, so this is your respiratory system, and that's your trachea, and it moves up. And do you guys see that blue blue circle, that's the voice box, aka the larynx. And then right at this side over here, you have your pharynx, which is the throat. So the mucus that moves up here and it's gonna go into your throat and then falls into your digestive system, especially your stomach, where it would actually have a lot of hydrochloric acid and would help to kill the bacteria. Okay, so moving on from that, there are pictomicrographs here that shows components labeled X and Y from the breathing system of a non-smoker as seen under the light microscope. So you can see over here X and Y, and X right here is in the trachea, so we can find here, this is found in the trachea, and Y is found in the lungs. And you can see right here, structure A, the very hair-like structure, that is your cilia. And over here, these ones, that's the airspace, and this actually refers to our cauliflower looking things, which is our alveoli. Okay, so here it asks you to label A, and that's pretty simple. Cilia. I always get this wrong as well, the fact that you only have one L in cilia. And second, the role of structure A. So what does the cilia do? Cilia moves mucus away from the trachea, so away from the lungs, and moves them into the pharynx. So how we word that to answer this question? Cilia moves mucus containing and the marks here is actually talking about moving mucus, and then that's your first mark, and you are saying away from the lungs is actually your second mark over here. Okay, last question is name label B, and we have already determined when we look at that question is that those are the alveoli. And that is the end of our past year paper practice for today. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to text me, and I will try my best to help you guys understand these questions even more. Thank you so much for joining my class today, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day ahead. Stay safe, everyone.